Hi, in this video, this is a GCSE higher paper walkthrough. As always, please do stop the video, have a go at each of the questions. If you're not sure about anything, always add a comment below. I'll always come back to you. I look forward to seeing you inside the video. Hi, this is the second video in the series where we're looking at the Edexcel June 2019 paper 2, and it's the higher tier. In the previous video we completed through to question number 11, so in this video we're going to start from question number 12. And as I've mentioned, I'm going to keep the video to roughly about 20 minutes, so it should give you about an hour's worth of fairly focused revision. Okay, so this particular question asks us to work out the perimeter of the sector. Now it's going to be a little bit of time to actually work through this, but basically it tells you the area of the sector is 40 centimeters squared. So this is this area here. Well, what we've got a question is, how do we find that information out? Well, to work out the area of a circle, we're actually looking at pi r squared. So in this particular case, we've got the area as 40, but it's not a whole circle. It's actually something out of 360. And this something is going to be the angle of the sector itself. And then if I multiply that by pi and multiply that by the radius squared, so 7 squared, it allows me to calculate this value of x just by virtue of working everything out here. So what I end up with is 40 equals x over 360, and that's going to be multiplied by 49x. I put these little dots in which basically means multiply. It's just a little bit neater, I think, on the video. Okay, so what I've got here then is, if I've got multiplied by 49x, what I can say is if I multiply through by 360, I'm going to get 14400, and I'm going to divide that by 49 pi, and that's going to equal x. So in this particular case, I can work out my value of x, which is this angle here, is going to be 93.544 degrees equals x. Okay, so that's going to help me a little bit to then work out the actual value of the circumference of the circle, because I can take this information and I can put it into another formula. Okay, and that other formula is going to be the circumference of a circle. So you need to remember these formulas. Okay, so the circumference equals pi d. Okay, now at the moment, again, I haven't got the full circumference, but what I've actually got is going to be part of the circle overall. So, but I've worked out that I've got 93.544 degrees out of 360, and that's going to be multiplied by pi, and d is the actual diameter, which is 14. So if I put that into a calculator, I'm going to get 11.428571. Now, you don't need to go to that many decimal places, but it's just for the purposes of this video. So what I've actually worked out there is going to be this length along here. I've used pi d as a whole circle, but I've worked out I've only got this particular angle. Now, if you're not sure about any of these calculations, always please add a comment and I'll always come back to you. Okay, so the question is asking us to work out the total perimeter. Now, just be very careful, because this is only the length of the actual circle. We've got to also add on these two pieces here. So the total perimeter is going to be equal to 11.485713 plus 7 plus 7, which are these two lines, and that's going to give us a total of 25.428571. And then I would go back to the question itself, and it asks you to give the answer correct to three significant figures. The third significant figure is 4, so therefore it's not going to change because this is less than 5. So the answer to the question will be 25.4 centimeters, and that's that particular question. Okay, so a little bit tricky. Some of these questions are going to take a little bit of time to work through, and it strikes me that the middle of this paper does does get a little bit difficult. Okay, so please do take your time working through these types of questions. Okay, let's move on then to question number 13, which is an algebra question, but it's got a little bit of work to do in this particular one. I'm not surprised they've given you a whole page to do it on. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm ignoring this 6 plus. I'm just going to work within the brackets here. And what I'm going to say is actually that's the same as saying 6 plus. I'm going to keep the square brackets and I'm going to make that x plus 5. And I'm going to write it over 1 because effectively I'm dividing by a fraction. So it's exactly the same as saying x plus 5 over 1. However, when I divide fractions, what I do is I flip and multiply. So I'm going to flip, and then this x plus x minus 1 goes to the top. Okay, and this bottom becomes this one. Now, in order to work with this, what I'm going to do is actually factorize that one straight away. So x squared plus 3x minus 10, well, I want two numbers that when I multiply them together make minus 10, which is 5 and 2. And when I add them together make plus 3, well, that's going to be positive 5 and minus 2, and that will give me minus 10 when I multiply them together. So I've got x plus 5 multiplied by x minus 2. And this is a very typical type of question because what happens then is it allows us to simplify this so that x plus 5 and x plus 5 can be cancelled through. So what I end up then with is 6 plus, and I've got basically these square brackets with x minus 1 on the top, and 1 times x minus 2 is x minus 2. Okay, so again, I've actually got two fractions I need to add together because when I'm adding fractions, I need to make sure the denominator is the same. Now, in this particular case, 6 is the same as saying 6 over 1. Well, that's no good to me. I need the same denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this fraction by x minus 2. So it will give me then the same denominator for both fractions because 1 times x minus 2 is going to be x minus 2. Okay, I'm going to add that to what's in the square brackets, which is x minus 1 over x minus 2. All right, so let's bring that together and just make it a little bit more easy to work with. Okay, so what I've got at the top here is going to be 6 times x is going to be 6x. 6 times minus 2 is going to be minus 12. I'm going to add that to x minus 1, and I'm going to divide the whole lot by x minus 2 because the denominators are the same. Okay, so when I then tidy all of this up, I've got 6x plus x is going to give me 7x, minus 12 minus 1 is going to give me minus 13, all divided by x minus 2. And actually, that's the answer to the question. It says where a, b, and c are integers, so the value of a is going to be 7, the value of b is going to be minus 13, the value of c is going to be positive 1, and the value of d is going to be negative 2. Okay, hopefully that's all right for you. Please do stop the video, have a go at these questions, and if you're not sure, always add a comment below and I'll always come back to you. Let's move on then to question number 14, which is a car journey. So it's a car that moves from rest and its speed and its time has been plotted. Okay, so then it says calculate an estimate for the gradient of the graph at t equals 15. So in other words, what we're saying is when the time is equal to 15, which is going to be here. Okay, now the gradient is the difference in y divided by the difference in x. So if you like, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, so in other words, what we have to do is create a tangent across there, and that will allow us then to be able to basically show a difference in x and a difference in y. I just need to move that on a bit. Okay, so this is not going to be the same for everybody. People will have slightly different views on this and the way that they actually calculate it, but there is a variation. So really what we're looking at is saying, well, actually, I've got a difference in y of, I'm going to use this to this, okay, and I'm going to do this to this along here. Okay, now it's not going to be exactly the same as the one that you will draw, but it will give you some idea of how we can work this out. Okay, so let's have a look then at the gradient, which is equal to the difference in y divided by the difference in x. Okay, or again, you might decide that to write it as y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Okay, now for the purposes of this particular video, I'm just going to say 25 minus 10. I appreciate it's not exactly at the top there, and at the bottom I'm going to have it as 25 minus 3. When I calculated this, it actually came out to there, but hopefully it's good enough for you, because there is this, as I mentioned, this variation. So 25 minus 10 divided by 25 minus 3 is going to give me a gradient of 15 over 22, and that's going to be exactly the same, if I put that in the calculator, of 0.681, with the 81 recurring, and that would be the answer. Now, looking at the marking scheme, providing you get anything between 0.6 and 1, you would still get the full credit for that particular question. Okay, then finally, there's a throwaway small question right at the very bottom. It says, describe what your answer to part 1 represents. So in other words, what does this actually represent? Well, it represents the acceleration of the car. Okay, acceleration of car after 15 seconds. Okay, so velocity time graphs, speed time graphs are always worthwhile. Just reviewing, if you get the opportunity to have a look at these things, they're perfectly fine, because they're usually worth sort of, I know at the moment we've only looked at 4 marks, but the second part of the question is actually worth an additional 3 marks, so it's worth 7 marks in total. So it's well worthwhile having a look at. Now, in this particular part of it, again, it's 2 pages, so it's a little bit difficult for me to work across, but hopefully we should be able to work this out. So work out an estimate for the distance the car travels in the first 20 seconds. Use 4 strips of equal width. So what they mean by that is, if we go back to the original drawing itself, it allows us between 0 and 20 to draw in here 4 strips, and then basically what they want us to do is to work out the area of each of the strips and add them together. So what you've got is a triangle and then 3 trapeziums. So it's well worthwhile using the trapezium area calculator to work that out. And I've just noticed that goes to there, sorry. Okay, so you could use the trapezium calculation to work that out. I'm going to number this as A, B, C and D, and I'm just going to actually write the answers through on the second sheet of paper, so hopefully this will be okay for you. All right, let's move on then to this sheet of paper. So work out an estimate for the distance the car travels in the first 20 seconds. Okay, so what I've got then for A is basically a triangle, so I'd work out a half times base times height. Well, that's going to give me a half, and the base is going to be 5 and the height is going to be 4, and that's going to give me 10. So in other words, it's 10 meters in the first little bit, the first 5 seconds of the journey. Okay, let's have a look at B then. Now, the formula for working out the area of a trapezium is a half A plus B times H. Now, you might use A plus B over 2 times H, and again, that's perfectly fine. It's going to be a half. A is 4 plus 12. Multiply H is 5. That's equal to 40. I'll just very briefly show you those dimensions. If you can imagine, what I've done is I've switched this around. So this would be A, this would be B, and then H is going to be the difference between 5 and 10, which is 5. Okay, so hopefully that's okay for you. A, B, and H. Okay, so let's move on then. That gives me the value of B. So the value of C is going to be equal to a half A plus B times H. I would try to encourage you always to write out these formulas, because it really does help you to remember them and use them quite naturally. I do an awful lot of work on these sorts of things, so therefore I'm so used to writing the formulas, I could also almost write them with my eyes closed. Okay, and I always remember them. I don't think I'll ever forget the formula for the area of a trapezium. Quite what use it is, I don't know. Okay, but that will give us then all of those values that we want, and all we need to do then is just add up 10 plus 40 plus 75 plus 95. That's going to give us a total of 220 meters, which would be the answer to that question B of part B of question number 14. Okay, so let's move on then to question number 15. I'm going to aim for about another 5-10 minutes or so maybe to work through this one, and this one is one of those questions where on the surface it looks fairly okay, but actually we need to use a bit of factorising to make m the subject of the formula. I'm going to multiply by m minus 1. Remember, this is over 1, so I'm just going to cross multiply. So that's going to give us f times m minus 1 equals 3m plus 4. Okay, so if I multiply that out, I get fm minus f equals 3m plus 4. And then really it's a case of getting the m's to one side and everything else to the other. So I'm going to minus this 3m from both sides, and I get fm minus 3m equals, and I've got 4, and I'm going to add the f to this side, 4 plus f. Okay, so that's a little bit of a switch, that one. I've done two things in one go. I've moved this over here, and I've moved that over to that side. Now, this is where really it differentiates with a higher level, because what we're being asked to do now is to make m the subject, so therefore I'm going to factorise for m. If I factorise for m, I get f minus 3, that equals 4 plus f, okay, and then I'm going to divide through by f minus 3, so I get m equals 4 plus f over f minus 3. If you want to write that as f plus 4 over f minus 3, that's perfectly fine as well. Just looks a little bit neater, I think. Okay, hopefully that's all right for you. Let's move on then to question number 16, which I'll probably make the last question on this particular video. Okay, so question number 16 is a straight line graph. Or a straight line equation rather, and it asks us to find the equation of a perpendicular. Well, as you know, if you're being asked to find the perpendicular, it is the negative reciprocal of the gradient of this line. So what we need to do is find the gradient of this line and then make it the negative reciprocal to get the gradient of line, the line that passes through A. Okay, let's have a look at L first. Now the problem we've got is that it says 3y. Well, that's no good to us. We want y to be equal to something, because we want it written in the form of y equals mx plus c. Okay, where m is the gradient, that's what we're trying to get. It's not 4, I'm afraid, because that's 3 values of y. So what we do is we divide through by 3. Now, if we've got 3y equals 4x plus 7, if I divide through by 3, don't forget I divide both of these by 3. So I can write that as y equals 4x over 3 plus 7 over 3. Okay, so actually that is the equation of this line L. Now what it tells us is the equation of the gradient, or the gradient itself, is 4 over 3. So therefore, if the line is perpendicular to L, then the gradient is going to equal to be minus 3 over 4x. It's the negative reciprocal. I put negative reciprocal. Okay. And if you're not sure about that, please do let me know. There are some videos on the site. Okay, now it's not going to pass through 7 over 3. It's going to pass through a constant. And the final bit of this jigsaw is we need to find out the value of the constant. In other words, where it actually goes through the y-axis. Okay, but what we're told is it does actually go through the point 3 minus 5. So we basically take that and feed it directly into this. And what it'll tell us then is that if we use point A, we've got a value of y of minus 5 and a value of x as as 3, and that's going to be plus c. Okay, so when I calculate all of that out, I get minus 5 equals minus 9 over 4 plus c. Okay, now you can really just put this into a calculator if you want to. I won't sort of spend too much time working this out with you, but if you work this into a calculator, you get minus 11 over 4 equals c. So therefore we can now write the full equation of the line, which is going to be this bit, which is the gradient plus the constant. So the answer to the question is y is minus 3 over 4x minus 11 over 4. It's a bit untidy, that one. What I'd be inclined to do, this is the correct answer, but what I'd be inclined to do is just multiply through by 4, because if I multiply through by 4, I get 4y equals minus 3x minus 11, which is actually kind of similar to the format that they gave us right at the very beginning. Won't matter too much, but it's just a nice neat way of finishing off. Okay, so that's the end of this particular video. I hope it's been useful to you. If you're not sure about anything, always add a comment below. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video, where we're going to start from question number 17.